Kidnapped Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum. Read by Caroline Laurie and Brad Shaw.
Indeed, the demons could not tempt old Santa Claus in any way. On the contrary, he was shrewd enough to see that their object in visiting him was to make mischief and trouble, and his cheery laughter disconcerted the evil ones and showed to them the folly of such an undertaking. So they abandoned honeyed words and determined to use force. It is well known that no harm can come to Santa Claus while he is in the Laughing Valley, for the fairies, the rills, the nooks all protect him. But on Christmas Eve, he drives his reindeer out into the big world, carrying a sleigh load of toys and pretty gifts to the children. And this was the time and the occasion when his enemies had the best chance to injure him. So the demons laid their plans and awaited the arrival of Christmas Eve.
The moon shone big and white in the sky, and the snow lay crisp and sparkling on the ground, as Santa Claus cracked his whip and sped away out of the valley into the great world beyond. The roomy sleigh was packed full of huge sacks of toys, and as the reindeer dashed onward, our jolly old Santa laughed and whistled and sang for very joy. For in all his merry life, this was one day in the year when he was the happiest. The day he lovingly bestowed the treasures of his workshop upon the little children. It would be a busy night for him, he knew well. As he whistled and shouted and cracked his whip again, he reviewed in mind all the towns and cities and farmhouses where he was expected, and figured that he'd just enough presents to go round and make every child happy. The reindeer knew exactly what was expected of them, and dashed along so swiftly that their feet scarcely seemed to touch the snow-covered ground.
Suddenly, a strange thing happened. A rope shot through the moonlight, and a big noose that was in the end of it settled over the arms and body of Santa Claus and drew tight. Before he could resist or even cry out, he was jerked from the seat of the sleigh and tumbled head foremost into the snowbank, while the reindeer rushed onward with the load of toys and carried it quickly out of sight and sound. Such a surprising experience confused old Santa for a moment, and when he had collected his senses, he found that the wicked demons had pulled him from the snowdrift and bound him tightly with many coils of stout rope. And then they carried the kidnapped Santa Claus away to their mountain, where they thrust the prisoner into a secret cave and chained him to the rocky wall so that he could not escape.
Laughed the demons, rubbing their hands together with cruel glee.
What will the children do now?
How they will cry and scold and storm when they find there are no toys in their stockings and no gifts on their Christmas trees.
And what a lot of punishment they will receive from their parents. And how they will flock to our caves of selfishness
And envy and hatred and malice. We have done a mighty clever thing, we demons of the caves.
Now it so chanced that on this Christmas Eve, the good Santa Claus had taken with him in his sleigh Newt the Rill, Peter the Nook, Kilter the Pixie, and a small fairy named Whisk, his 4 favourite assistants. These people he had often found very useful in helping him to distribute his gifts to the children, and when their master was so suddenly dragged from the sleigh, they were all snugly tucked underneath the seat, where the sharp wind could not reach them. The tiny immortals knew nothing of the capture of Santa Claus until some time after he disappeared. But finally they missed his cheery voice, and their master always sang or whistled on his journeys. The silence warned them that something was wrong. Little Whisk stuck out his head from underneath the seat and found Santa Claus gone and no one to direct the flight of the reindeer.
Woo!
He called out, and the deer obediently slackened speed and came to a halt. Peter and Neuter and Kilter all jumped upon the seat and looked back over the track made by the sleigh. But Santa Claus had been left miles and miles behind.
What shall we do?
Asked Whisk anxiously, all the mirth and mischief banished from his wee face by this great calamity.
We must go back at once and find our master,
said Neuter the Rill, who thought and spoke with much deliberation.
No,
exclaimed Peter the Nook, who, cross and crabbed though he was, might always be depended upon in an emergency.
if we delay or go back, there will be not time to get the toys to the children before morning, and that would grieve Santa Claus more than anything else.
It is certain that some wicked creatures have captured him,
Added Kilter thoughtfully.
and their objective must be to make the children unhappy. So our first duty is to get the toys distributed as carefully as if Santa were himself present. Afterwards, we can search for our master and easily secure his freedom.
This seemed such good and sensible advice that the others at once resolved to adopt it. So Peter the Nook called to the reindeer, and the faithful animals again sprang forward and dashed over hill and valley, through the forest and plain, until they came to the houses wherein children lay sleeping and dreaming of the pretty gifts they would find on Christmas morning.